Hey, welcome to the Hope City Heartbeat, where we help you keep a pulse on everything to do with faith, family, and finances. We are your hosts, Gina and Tyler Butler. Welcome to episode 1
Welcome.
of our brand new podcast.
This is exciting. This has been on our hearts for a while, and I'm so glad that we get to jump in and get started and see where it takes us.
And I'm glad that I have the most beautiful co-host in the entire world. Let's just start right there. I think that's how we need to start this podcast.
Just start making me feel super awkward.
That's what I do best. So today we want to title this episode and really talk about how to know that you found the one. How to know that you found the one.
The one.
And I think a great way to start is by just us briefly telling a little bit of our story, how we met, and all of that. So take it away.
Yeah, so for him, it was love at first sight.
Here we go.
I'm just kidding. So I
mean,
lived,
it was.
But anyways, I was living in Miami, Georgia at the time, actually, and working for a ministry that was working alongside the ministry that he worked at. And I was doing some secretarial work for them. And so I had to reach out and get his phone number. And of course he said, well, if you wanted my number, you could have just asked for it. And I was like, okay, that's not, I know. But from there we started talking, and I
had that riz even way back then, didn't I? Tell the truth. Shame the devil.
You know, you're all right. But so we started dating long distance. I was best friends with his sister. And so he would tell his sister, like, she told him, you need to find somebody like my friend Gina. And like, little did she know that he was thinking about her friend Gina. Mm-hmm. And so we were dating, going back and forth. I then moved to Miami and lived there, and we did long distance for a while. And then I moved to Racine, and I lived in proximity to Tyler, and we dated in the same city. And then a beautiful proposal. Do you want to talk about that?
I don't want to bore people. However,
it was probably the best. Like, anytime people now tell him their proposal idea, he's like, that's trash.
I mean, no shade to anybody else, but I do think I just wanted our proposal or my proposal to you to be special and different. Yeah. And so I told you or wrote a card or something and said whatever the date was or day. Like, for example, on Thursday, I need you to be ready at like 5 a.m. I'll come pick you up from your house. And you didn't know what was happening. And we ended up getting on an airplane and flying to New York City.
Yeah.
Where we landed, and probably whatever that is, 8 in, and we went to Central Park. And I had hired a photographer to follow us around Central Park.
She was a secret photographer. Yeah. I didn't know that she was following us.
That's right. And then we went to the castle on the north side of the park, which I didn't know. I didn't know because we entered the very southern part of Central Park.
We walked for miles.
I didn't know Central Park was so massive. I mean, I should have done some research. But it took you're like, can we turn around? I get it. And I'm like, no.
Can we go eat lunch? I'm hungry.
Yeah, because we had to get to this castle at the back end of the park. And that's where I proposed to the top of a castle when the photographer got it all, of course. And then we spent the whole day in New York City just going to different restaurants. And we ended up seeing The Lion King that night. And then we caught the last flight back to Milwaukee that same day. So it was whatever that was, 12 hours or less in New York City with a ring on your finger. And yeah, I would hold our proposal up against many others that we heard.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, you did great. And I woke up the next day thinking, like, that was a dream, and so even though that proposal was incredible, and even though I love our story, I think that there's this notion for people of, there's all this pressure to find the one, I hear it all the time.
Yeah. So just for context, at the time of this podcast, we have been married about 11 and a half years and have 4 beautiful children. And our love obviously grows deeper and, I think just more secure and stable and mature
Yeah.
all the time. And yeah, it does lead us to the question, how do you know that you found the one? I think so many people watching maybe who are single or dating or have this question, and we hear it in culture, we hear it in society. How do you know you found the one? Or people saying, we hear it in movies all the time, this notion that there is one person
Right.
out there for you. And
That's a lot of pressure.
it's a whole lot of pressure. And so I would just like go on record, and then you can take it from here and say, excuse me, I think the one is a myth. I don't think personally that there is one person out there for you. What happens if that person has a tragedy and passes away? Or what happens if you just happen to not find them, or your schedules didn't align, and then so you're just out of luck the rest of your life? I don't think there is a one. I do think there are qualities that we're looking for, and we'll get into that. But I don't think there's a one. I think you make who you choose to be the one. And
Right.
so I think that you are obviously now my one, but it wasn't like you were the only one. You weren't my only choice.
You had a lot of options,
I did.
huh?
I mean, I did. Let's be honest. But so did you,
Okay.
and I think so do. Many people are probably in that same boat. Where like, you have options, and not in a weird way, but just you have options and you have choices, and making that choice. That's what it is. Love is ultimately a choice, and choosing one another, and then they become the one.
Right, which is why marriage, besides your relationship and choosing Jesus, marriage is the most important choice that you will ever make. Because, like you said, it is a choice, and when you choose that, you're stuck with your choice for better or worse. And so, that's, as we kind of get into the qualities that you should be looking for in a potential spouse, if you're dating or even engaged, if there's red flags or things that as you're listening to this, you're kind of evaluating, that slow down, pray about it. Don't just move quickly, because I also think that there's this whole idea of to just get to the wedding day, especially for women. I've seen it a lot in young girls and in young ladies, that it's so celebrated, and it should be the wedding, but there's a lifetime after the wedding, and there's so
Right.
much more than just getting married and just the dress, and that's literally one day. And so to rush forward through all of the things just to get to that day, just to get a ring on your finger, just to say I do and celebrate, it's so much more than that.
Yeah, and I think it starts with dating, or old school word would be courtship, or getting to know someone, or seeing people, whatever the terms are. I think, with our foundation being, of course, our relationship with Jesus, and the Bible being what we stand on and try to live our life according to Jesus's teachings. I think in the culture we live in today, there's such a it's so casual. Dating has become so casual. Hookup culture and body counts and these things that have become more and more popular just because of the society we live in, and social media and all that. I think I would highly stress that if you're serious about finding someone to be with for the rest of your life, who's going to be a added benefit to you and a value to you, and obviously that goes both ways, that it starts with dating. It starts with dating with the intention of finding your spouse. That you're not dating just to date. You're not dating just because they're hot or they're attractive or whatever. You're not dating. You're dating because you're trying to just see, is this someone I could see myself marrying? And I think dating for any other reason, I'm not saying it's a waste of time but I think it's a little short-sighted. I think it can, if you're not careful, you can begin to catch feelings and push past red flags if there's not a real intentionality behind your dating season.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of the Bible says, above all else, to guard your heart, for everything else flows from it. And I think so many people go into dating relationships without guarding their heart at all. And then once you get in so deep, you're not backing up. Once you cross lines, you're not going backwards. And I think that's so important as you get into relationships, to guard your heart, that if you feel like the Lord is showing you something about this person, or you see red flags, that you can easily say, I'm out, because if you're not who I'm going to spend forever with, then it's a waste of my time and it's a waste of your time. So let's just walk away now. And I think that that is something that you have to always continue to submit before God and to guard your heart with.
Right. Yeah, and to not push past those red flags.
Yeah.
You know,
such as?
Well, I was just going to say, being pastors, we have obviously had the privilege and the honor of helping so many young people in this season of their life work through some things. And it's a theme that we see pop up time and time again, is people pushing past red flags because they think they can change the other person.
Yeah.
And come on, let's be honest, Gina. You are not going to change the other person.
No.
Especially, and I see this time and time again with women. It's not always women, but I would say that the majority of the time it's the woman who thinks she's going to change him. That she's going to be the one who finally gets through. His last 6 girlfriends couldn't do it, but she's going to be the one.
Your love is going to be enough.
Yeah. and the truth is, even if they do change for a person, if they change for the wrong reasons, the change won't last. Mm-hmm. And so we see sometimes men changing for their girlfriend just to get married, or so that she'll end up marrying him. And then as soon as they're married, he goes back, and sometimes she goes back to the very person that they used to be, because the change was for the wrong reason.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we see that a lot of times with women who have been married a while, and they are frustrated, and they come and talk to us, and they say, my husband doesn't come to church, and now my kids don't want to come to church. What do I do? And I think you have to evaluate now before you get to that. If they are all of a sudden starting a relationship with Jesus, or all of a sudden starting to go to church because of you and not because they want a personal relationship with Jesus, it might be time to pause, walk away, and then let them build a relationship with Jesus completely separate from you. Right. Because if it's attached to you, it's probably for you.
Yeah.
Hey, sorry for the interruption, but we want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share this with somebody else to get the word out about this podcast. Also, if you have any questions, we want you to drop them in the comments below. Now let's get back to the show.
So we don't believe there's necessarily the one, but we do believe that you will pick up on signs, red flags, etc., that will tell you that they're definitely not the one.
Right.
And I think one of those things is, one of those clear-cut things is, when you're like, this is not the one, is if you are what the Bible calls unequally yoked. And I don't want to bore our listeners, but it speaks of in that Bible passage of unequally yoked, of 2 animals being yoked together as they would be undoubtedly pulling a plow in a farming context. And if one was stronger than the other, then what ends up happening, if 2 animals are yoked together and one is stronger than the other, whatever's stronger begins to actually turn the entire yoke and the entire plow, and then eventually you just end up doing circles. Mm. If you're not pulling at the same pace, if you're not equally yoked, what ends up happening is you just do circles. And we see that, it's so powerful, it's such a powerful illustration, because we see that, or metaphor, we see that in relationships. Mm-hmm. When you're unequally yoked, the relationship will ultimately just end up being you guys just going in a bunch of circles. and you're wondering why we never got anything planted. You're wondering why there's not been any growth. You wonder why we're not seeing the fruit. Well, fruit requires time. Fruit requires something being planted and being watered and
Going the same direction.
going the same direction. And so, I think being unequally yoked is kind of what we're talking about. Of like, if you're a believer, hear me. If you are a believer in Jesus, you don't need to be dating someone who's a non-believer. That doesn't mean you're not friends with them. That doesn't mean you don't love them, pray with them, hang out with them, all that. But like, dating is not for like, I'm going to get him saved or I'm going to get her saved. I've just seen that. I've seen that story 1,000 times. Right. It ends in heartbreak almost every single time because unequally yoked is not what we're called to do.
Right.
What would be some other things that we would notice? Like, this is a telltale sign that they are not the one.
That he doesn't have a job.
Oof. Preach, Gina Butler.
I mean, if I see one more young lady bankrolling their boyfriend, don't do it, y'all. That ain't right.
I have to agree. I mean, and of course, everything for us goes back to Scripture and the first marriage between Adam and Eve. And Adam had a job. Yeah. Like, Adam was working, tending the garden. All the animals were brought before him, and he named them one by one. And so before Adam ever had a wife, Adam had a job. And what we're not talking about, men out there, before you try to grill us in the comments in the chat, we're not talking about you're in between jobs. We're not talking about you got laid off and you're trying to find a new job. We're not talking about you're actively putting in resumes. We're talking about
work ethic.
We're talking about work ethic. We're talking about that dude who'd rather be playing Call of Duty or is at the gym 17 hours a day but doesn't have a job. We're talking about laziness. We're talking about not living up to what I believe is a God-given responsibility to every man, which is to provide, for their family and for their household to the best of their ability. And that's not even about income.
Yeah.
That's not about income levels. It's about work ethic. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I agree, because that will only get worse with age. That will only get worse with time. Mm-hmm. If they won't work now when they're trying to impress you, if they're lazy now, how about this one? How about noticing how somebody treats their parents, but beyond that, people who they can't get anything from. I think it's very telling how somebody treats, for example, waiters and waitresses, or people they just bump into.
Yeah. And
if they're rude or condescending, not that you can't overcome some of that, but I think that's something to keep an eye on. Because everything, here's the thing, marriage doesn't hide things, it actually magnifies things. Mm-hmm. So if you're a jerk before you get married, you're going to be a bigger jerk after you get married. Or on the other end, if you're a great person, like, that's only going to be magnified. It doesn't hide, it magnifies. And so I think you want to keep an eye on some of these things as you're dating or trying to pick who could be your one.
Right. I think it's important to find somebody who pulls out the best in you, even that potential that you don't necessarily see for yourself, but they know that God has placed on the inside of you. I think that's important, and I think it builds mutual respect and encouragement and teamwork and friendship when you are encouraging somebody like, hey, I noticed da-da-da-da, come on, let's do this together, come on, I know you can do it. And just to encourage, I think that's such an important part of a relationship. For sure.
I also would like to just throw out there, it actually starts not with the other person, it starts with you. Mm-hmm. And before you start looking for your one, I think you should actually look in the mirror and see am I the person worth marrying? Am I the type of person that is ready to move forward if I meet the one?
Yeah.
Because chances are, like all of us, there's probably things we can work on, or you can work on, to become the one for somebody else. I think that's powerful to think. Not only am I looking for the one, which we've already established how we feel about that, but I could be, as a single person, I'm somebody's one. Mm-hmm. I'm somebody's person that they're going to choose to be their one. And so I need to improve myself now. And so if you're single, if you're in a season of singleness or dating or whatever, I think it's powerful to not just pick apart other people, but to really focus on yourself, work on yourself, improve in areas that you can improve in.
Right. And then I think that everybody has their non-negotiables. Like every person's is different. And I've used this analogy with some young ladies before. My dream home might look different than somebody else's dream home.
Yeah.
Maybe my dream home, like I really want a big
pool.
front,
Okay.
a pool. Okay. A big front porch, but maybe that's not somebody else's. And so there's the things that, of course, they need to be saved. They need to have a job. They need to, the things like that are absolute. But then there's preferences that I think are very important as well, and that you need to know for yourself before you just jump into something and later on be like, I really wish whatever it was that you know before you go into stuff. And knowing even how people give and receive love. I mean, that's like a whole nother conversation, but it's important. It's important as you have these conversations with maybe somebody you're dating or interested in, because those things matter. It's the little things that I've seen tear up relationships. It's not always the big things that that destroy stuff.
All right. So let's say there's somebody out there who's in a relationship that they know, I'm not going to marry this person. But maybe they've been with them. They're in love, or they have history. Or what would you say to that person, whether it's a man or a woman?
Get out, run, flee. I think that you have to keep in mind that every time you kiss somebody or be with somebody or treat this person in a way, that you are doing that to somebody else's husband or somebody else's wife. Like, that's kind of sobering to think of, in that would you want somebody else to be doing that to your future husband or your future wife? And so I think evaluating it in that way, that you are wasting time, you're wasting emotional capacity, you're wasting the things that God could be doing on the inside of you and with you and your time by investing it in somebody who is not there for the long run anyways. And so end it as fast as you can, and allow yourself a season of singleness to seek God and all the plans that He has for you. Know who you are in Him before you invite somebody else to be part of that circle.
Yeah, and you're probably not even going to understand what I'm about to say because it's a sports analogy, but like, you're not Dennis Rodman, so quit trying to rebound so much. If I see one more person jump from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship, take that time to be single. Take that time to spend with the Lord, to work on yourself. It's okay. And sure, someone's probably thinking it's easier said than done. You've been married for 11 years, but there's a season where I got out of a relationship and I was single for a season before, we started talking, and the same for you. And I think those seasons of really being single or being, intentional with the Lord really help set you up for the future. So don't rebound. Like, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be fine. You don't have to jump into the next thing just because. And the truth is, it's gonna hurt no matter when you do it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be painful no matter when.
Don't put it off.
So you might as well deal with it and move forward.
And I think that idea, so you're talking about people rebounding and whatnot, but it's people that don't like to be alone because you don't want to be lonely. But the truth is, if you can't figure out how to be alone, then you're probably not ready for a relationship anyways, because that person's not going to fix you.
Yeah.
It's not like you bring your 50% and they bring their 50%
Right.
and all of a sudden it's a whole beautiful marriage. It's they have to bring their 100% and you have to bring your 100%. And you can't invest all of your identity in the person that you're with, or
Right.
you will still end up lonely.
Right.
And the point was, you were trying to run away from being lonely. So be okay being alone. Be okay with just you and God. And then He will bring that person along in your path at the right time.
That's great perspective, because we don't complete one another. Like, I'm not like, oh my gosh, babe, you complete me. No, but you do compliment me. I do compliment you. So it's not about completing one another. It's about complimenting one another, which is actually very biblical. And together, yes, you're stronger than you were by yourself, but it's not like you complete me or I complete you, but we do complement one another and help each other move along in the things that God has for us.
Yeah. And maybe at a future time we can talk on identity, because
Yeah.
if you don't know who you are, then you will get caught up in, and that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody else also. Like if all of my identity was found in you being my husband, like that's a lot of pressure on you. That's the only kind of pressure that you should put on God. My whole identity is found in being his child.
Right. What are some other big red flags you're like, this person definitely is not the one? I think if that person does not line up with some of your big non-negotiables.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want kids and you want to be a mom or a dad, for example, and they are very heart set on like, I don't want any kids, like that's going to be a deal. And you can just brush it off and push through it and hope that it changes.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've learned is that normally those things don't change. They just actually continue to magnify.
Mm-hmm.
Or, do you, like we talked about, are you going to raise your family in the faith or not? Some of these bigger things are really important.
They are.
And I think when you're dating intentionally, you begin to have these more serious conversations. It's more than Netflix and chill. It's more than hookup culture. It's like, can I see myself marrying you? Let's have some real, honest conversations about things that really matter.
Intentionality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, when you choose to be the one, I think it's the most beautiful thing in the world when you marry the right person. I think it's an unbelievable gift from God. I think that, the Bible says a man who finds a wife obtains favor from the Lord, finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. And I definitely consider my life blessed and better because of finding you. Honestly, I'm not just saying that because we're on a podcast, although if it helps me out a little later, then that's between
Okay.
us and the Lord. But, I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think it sets you up for success. It sets up generational blessings where our kids are going to be raised knowing that mom and dad love each other and they're on the same page and all the things that matter or matter most. And I think it's just a great thing. I agree with you, and I want to underscore marrying the right person besides your walk with the Lord is the single most important decision you're ever going to make. It dictates the rest of your life and the course it will go. And so I'm honored to be married to you, babe.
Thank you. The feeling is so mutual.
Let's go.
I think another big one I thought of is complementary callings. And that's why it's important to take a season, just you and the Lord, so that he can show you, what are you called to? If you're called to be a church planter in some random country across the world, and the person you're with is like, I'm never leaving this town, you will at some point either give up your calling, or you will stay where you are and always be mad at that person that you're with because you
resent them.
Yes, you'll resent them because you feel like disturbed that you didn't get to fulfill your calling that God has placed on your life. And so that's really important, especially for the head of the household, to be able to do what God has called them to do and have the freedom to do that, and the wife, which is biblically the helper, to be able to come alongside and complement that.
And there's so much more that we didn't have a chance to get into. And so what we'd like to do is ask you, if you have any questions, any things we didn't get to, go ahead and comment them, put them in the chat, and then in our next future episodes, we'll do our very best to answer maybe even a segment of Q&A as we answer as many of those as possible. So until next time, date intentionally.
Or break up with them.
Or break up with somebody. Don't push through the red flags. And you'll thank us later. Thanks for watching. We'll see you real soon.